All I know is you never had the makings of a varsity athlete.
Phaedra, man. I just watched this show. So which of these shows did you watch first? What was your history with these?
Breaking Bad when I was 13, which was in April of 2015. I had just turned 13. It was on Netflix. It's still on Netflix, but I was just starting to get into like really heavy kind of TV dramas. I was just starting, and you know, it was like the most praised show ever. So I was like, I need to watch this, and I did, and I'm so happy that I did.
So this show was like already over by the time you watched it.
I was just a little too young to watch it while it came out. It ended while I was 11.
I knew of it. This show would be on. Like I remember, what network was this on? AMC, right?
You're goddamn right.
It would be on and I would see it. In this era, I think I was just watching Supernatural. That was my favorite show. I'd be there every Thursday night.
You remember the Super Hulock days?
I was strictly Supernatural. I did not touch the Doctor Who or that.
No, you're missing out. That was it.
I did watch some of the Sherlock. If you rewatch those again, those shows, that Sherlock did not age well.
I can imagine it didn't. I can imagine that it did not age well.
I was a big Malcolm in the Middle fan. So every time I would see like the Malcolm in the Middle dad, why is he making drugs? Like it just, I couldn't like, cause I saw so much Malcolm in the Middle growing up that seeing him do this, it was just a disconnect, like or something.
Those guys making crack or some shit.
Yeah, it's weird, man. And then he was always in like his underwear and stuff. I'd be like, I can't watch this, man.
I didn't watch Malcolm in the Middle as a kid. I again kind of missed that. So this was the first thing I ever really saw Bryan Cranston in.
Like, unless it's like the classics like Goodfellas or like Godfather, I'm not really into like mob or drug dealing. Like I never seen The Wire or anything like that. I don't know.
Same. I mean, I've obviously seen like Goodfellas and The Godfather just because like, you know, you kind of have to.
Yeah, they're great movies.
But yeah, they are. That never really, the concept in and of itself never really like enticed me. But what I thought was so interesting about The Sopranos was like before getting into it, I had kind of read the premise of, you know, the typical mob storyline is kind of like a rise and fall. The premise behind The Sopranos is that Tony Soprano's rise and fall are kind of happening simultaneously throughout the entire show. This is something different. This is something special, and I really want to like, you know, investigate.
I think what separates The Sopranos from other mob stuff, if you watch The Godfather, kind of like you really only see like the world from the mob's perspective. Like it's like you're in an enclosed society. Like you don't really see like how this affects the world around them. Like, and it kind of makes them look better. Like as you don't really see them how they're destroying the community with what they do. Like you just only see them destroying each other. And I don't know, like Godfather kind of puts the mobsters in like a respectable position. The Sopranos, it's like these are bad people. Like it's not
like everyone in this show sucks. Like, objectively, like they suck. Of course, it's like real world contemporary setting, but the perspective is kind of like, you know, you're following them, but you also see how they're engaging with everybody else, and you kind of see them struggling in a lot of ways to kind of fit in. Like they're kind of like misfits in their community a bit. You know, the mob life is so glamorized in other media, but in The Sopranos, it like kind of makes you an outsider in a way.
Like in The Sopranos, like everyone knows that like they're mobsters. Like even if they live in their like wealthy neighborhoods, everyone knows that they're mobsters. They want to be like treated like respectable civilians.
Everyone treats them with like fear or contempt or like mistrust.
It's like if you saw Michael, like if there was like a subplot of him like driving his kids to school, you don't really see Michael Corleone in The Godfather like, I'm making a sandwich in the afternoon, or like, you know, I gotta go pick up the bread from the store. Like you don't see like these little random like menial things. Like
there's a scene right before Tony gets hit in like I think season 1 where he's buying orange juice, and it kind of like is an homage to in The Godfather buying the oranges, and it's just so much less cinematic in The Sopranos. Like it's very intentionally, it looks a lot more mundane. Basically, like David Chase just like recreated a moment just like without any of the glamour to just showcase like how lame this stuff really is.
Breaking Bad is just like continuous, like a year, right? It's like a year or two, right?
It's 2 years.
It's like Sopranos spans over 8 years, and you see like
Yeah.
characters change. You see like, oh, this is what this character is like once this happens to them, and like you see like Tony Jit like trying to change, and you see him like evolve and devolve at the same time. I mean, there is growth. There's definitely character growth, but it's like in Breaking Bad, it's just one consistent like way
Yeah.
that all the characters are going.
I think with Breaking Bad, Walter White has a lot more of like a clear cut sort of character arc. It's like a very clear kind of just straight descent pretty much.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Tony's are kind of like meanders in a way. He always kind of teeters along the same line between, morality, good, bad. He kind of teeters along that line throughout the show. I think The Sopranos kind of makes a point out of how by the end of the show, very little about both Tony's life and Tony as a person had changed. Whereas, Breaking Bad is all about like the metamorphosis from, the first episode, which, happens to Walt. It's very dramatic. It's very, pretty clean.
Tony Soprano was definitely a more complex character, but it's because you have much more time, and like Breaking Bad has one plot, like it's one plot, whereas like Sopranos, it's like there's so much going on, like there's so many different things happening all the time. Walter White just wants to cook his meth and then just distribute it, and Tony has like all these different things going on. So when there was that Twitter debate going on of like who is the better character, I'm like, I don't know, they kind of, for like their story, they're the best character for their story.
I agree. I mean, personally, I feel like Tony just kind of provides more food for thought. And so I think I prefer that overall. I mean, Walter's a great character, and also like brilliantly acted, and so is Tony. James Gandolfini is fantastic. So many aspects of Tony's character are left kind of open-ended. Just how conscientious he was of like, the morality of his actions, I feel like is just interesting. There's a lot to read between the lines with Tony that I find that it helps keep the show like on my mind, because there's things to still kind of decipher and figure out and interpret. Breaking Bad, other than, if Walt poisoned the kid, I feel like it's pretty like it's pretty clear cut on like what happens.
Also, like I felt like I didn't always know what Tony was going to do. Like,
yeah,
I felt like I could always be like, okay, Walter's like everything that Walter did never really surprised me, because it was you always knew like, okay, he's gonna be pushed, and then he's gonna do this, and then that's gonna be the new limit. Then he's gonna push and then break, and then that's gonna be. But like, I don't know, Tony Soprano always just kept you guessing. Like you weren't sure like what he was gonna do.
All of these mob characters have such short fuses. Like they kill their own vibes so quickly. Like literally everyone's chilling, having a fine conversation, and then suddenly someone gets shot. Like there's again such short fuses. No one has any sense of patience, and everyone is just so unpredictable. If Tony's in a good mood, he'll like let something go. If he's in a bad mood, sometimes he's in a bad mood and he'll let something slide. Sometimes he won't. Like you never know with Tony. Ollie's a great example of honestly someone who's very like despicable in a lot of ways, but he's
amazing.
Funny. He's so funny and goofy that like you can't even hate him, even if he's like probably one of the worst people in the crew.
He choked out an old lady just to pay Tony, just to win Tony, because he needed to earn more. If we're talking just about the comedy of each show, Sopranos is hilarious. Sopranos are straight up a comedy.
People get surprised when I tell them it's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. I mean, a lot of the jokes I honestly can't repeat. It's not for 2022 audiences.
Like the comedic timing, and it's so hilarious because they take it so seriously. Like nothing is intended. Like sometimes you watch a modern comedy and it feels like they're not taking this seriously. Like they know it's ridiculous, but like they like just play it so serious that it's hilarious, man.
The fact that they're all so funny just makes them innately more likable. So, let me start over. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, what was I saying? I haven't filmed a video in a while, if you can tell.
Usually you're like prepared. Like we're talking about Paramore. You're like,
Yes,
you're
yes.
you're
I
ready
know
for
I know
this.
a lot about this. Oh no, literally, like Paramore. I'm with that. Literally, I feel confident in making shit up when it comes to Paramore. Like, I minor in film studies, so like so much of my education is just like making shit up about what I think this scene means or what this writing choice means. Like literally, just it's a Rorschach test, and you just map on whatever you want.
What's the episode that everyone talks about? Pine Barrens or
Yes.
Barrens? Like that is such a dark episode when you really think about it. Like they like that guy didn't need to die. He that Russian guy did not need to die, but they made it hilarious. Like the fact that they were taking him to like the forest barefoot to have him dig his own grave, and it's hilarious the whole time. Like that's
Yeah.
it's hard to like make something like that funny.
I just got quips for days, bro.
It's Christopher. That's you got it,
Christopher.
Christopher and Paulie, man. They're
Chrissy.
we need like a Christopher and Paulie like sitcom. Comedy Sopranos beats Breaking Bad. I wanted to talk about like the characters. Like I think Walter and Jesse are kind of the strong characters of Breaking Bad. But
Mhm.
like I don't know, I think the Sopranos just has but I mean, just by virtue of it being such a long spanning show and you get to know all these, I don't know, Sopranos just has more likable and memorable characters. Like I don't know, I could watch a show about about Sil. Like I'd watch a show about Paulie. I'd like they're all just cool guys that you would like want to just watch.
You mentioned the duo of Walt and Jesse, which I can see kind of mirrored in Tony and Christopher, kind of like that. It's more or less sort of father-son dynamic, because that's kind of what both of the shows are going for with them. I think that, I mean, given that they both kind of have a very tumultuous relationship, and obviously spoilers for the Sopranos, Tony ends up killing Christopher. Walter pretty much is behind most of Jesse's anguish in life. Like he allows his girlfriend to die. He rats him out to those Nazis who pretty much torture him. So both of them have inflict kind of immense harm onto people who kind of are supposed to look up to them like a father, which I think is pretty dark and interesting that both of these dynamics kind of feature that. When Jesse is being stupid and Walt's reacting to it, it's very funny. Whereas I feel like
Yeah.
Tony and Christopher's relationship is a lot more kind of consistently tense. Like they have a lot less fun as a duo.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
feel like
definitely a real camaraderie between like there's kind of a forced like bond between Christopher and Tony, like when you have like a nephew that like you're like if this wasn't my nephew I would never hang out with this person. There just seems to be a more real like they're friends, I guess, like
yeah,
between
I definitely feel like
yeah.
Christopher is kind of, it's more of an obligation for Christopher because he doesn't really have much of a choice. Walt and Jesse enjoy each other's company a lot more than Christopher enjoys Tony's.
Fumigated and they're just like watching TV together talking. Like
Yeah.
anytime I ever saw anytime I ever saw Christopher and Tony like
Mhm.
just sitting together, it never felt natural. It always felt like there was hatred. Like
Yeah. And also interesting, a lot of both of their dynamics are kind of built on lies. If not lies, like very important omissions of the truth. Christopher seeing Tony as seeing someone who he's supposed to become,
yeah.
versus Jesse and Walt, Jesse, it's more like partnership.
Jesse and Walt are strong. Like they're really strong. It almost makes up for the other weaker characters. Like I like Skylar, but I don't know if I was to put Skylar against Carmela Soprano as like characters that I enjoy watching act on screen. I'd rather Carmela Soprano.
Yeah,
I'd
I
rather
mean,
see
both of them are
Carmela.
phenomenal actresses. Anna Gunn in the scene where Walt is kind of more or less kidnapping their baby daughter, like that. That's a
Yeah.
heartbreaking scene. Like that's such a phenomenal scene. Carmelo, Edie Falco, that argument, the end of season 4, the argument between her
The
and Tony.
blue caps.
Yes,
The blue caps,
that was
man.
insane. That was insane acting right there. She won that argument, by the way. Like she totally won that argument. Carmela is a bit of an enabler from the start, whereas Skylar rejects it and then becomes kind of like an accomplice in of itself. Like both of them are kind of accomplices in a way. Carmela, I just think Carmela just has like her roots spread out further. Like you get to learn more about her by just how she interacts with a wider cast of characters, and you get to learn more about her, like the way she interacts with her daughter, her son, Tony, her friends, outsiders, the way she'll like kind of wield her status as like a mobster wife to get what she wants. The resentment she has of her daughter, sort of because Meadow is like an independent woman and Carmela is more or less kind of trapped. More food for thought.
Breaking Bad, it can seem kind of one note because there's just not much time to explore these things. Like
it definitely feels like redundant to say that The Sopranos is more thorough because it has it's got like 2-3 years on Breaking Bad in terms of runtime, and it's got such a large, enormous cast. Breaking Bad has maybe like 6 main characters. Sopranos got like, I saw the cast reunion, the 20-year cast reunion. There was like 15 people there. Like it was a lot, endless amount of side characters. I mean, Breaking Bad saw that they had one really good side character, and now they have a whole show about him. So
I was gonna bring up Saul because I thought Breaking Bad was good. Like I was like, okay, season 1, this is good. Season 2, it's starting good, and then they introduced Saul. I was like, okay, Saul has elevated this show.
Yeah, Saul's amazing.
To a new level.
I just started season 5 of Better Call Saul because I had never seen it before, and it's really good. And I mean, that man is so entertaining. Like that man, I mean, other characters are great. There are some Breaking Bad characters that are in that show, but he is really like the leading man. Like he is so engaging and funny. He's hilarious. Like he is so funny, and he totally works as a protagonist. Like I really do love that show. It's very good.
I started liking Hank. He's the most like pure character on the show. Even I'm counting Marie too. Like Hank is the purest character on that show. Yeah. Even if he wants to make America great again.
Yeah.
Like, and he went out like a G. I respected it. That was like another great thing about Breaking Bad was like, Walt has his moments where he's like, I'm a drug lord, I'm Heisenberg, but the moment he gets punched in the face, he just crumbles. Like Tony feels like he can back up the things he says. Like,
I think they're kind of reversed. I think Walt is, physically vulnerable in a lot of ways. Like he doesn't hold up to a physical threat. Emotionally and intellectually, he often like kind of is able to remain in like, or keep the high ground. Whereas Tony is never really physically threatened because he's huge. He's not like muscular, but he's strong. Like he's very physically imposing, but emotionally speaking, he doesn't really last in an argument. He's again a very short fuse. He is kind of insecure and unsure about a lot of the things he feels. So I feel like to beat Walt in a confrontation, you just kind of have to physically show him up, whereas to beat Tony, you just have to say like one thing and he'll lose it, The
thing they have in common is they're both very manipulative people.
Tony is not nearly as like calculating as Walt. I think Tony's strength in manipulation is more like conversation, whereas Walt like meticulously plans like circumstances and just kind of like all the details of the plan to execute. Whereas I feel like Tony is able to kind of get what he wants through like charisma.
Yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily like logic or reasoning. It's just like sheer charisma and how like he's able to sell it to people. I feel like the only people that Walt's really able to, or the only person I think Walt's able to like successfully continuously manipulate is Jesse. Skylar never believes his shit. Like, whereas Tony
even his son, his son was like, no.
Tony is kind of successful at manipulating, maybe not Carmela, but more or less everybody. Like Tony wins with his words a lot.
But the reason Tony wins is because one, he's a mob boss and he's physically imposing. Like,
yeah, that intimidation factor is getting him very far.
like some of the stuff he pulls, like if he was like a 5'6" guy that that wouldn't work.
Literally no one respected Richie because of that. You do what to me? Can't even reach my head.
The thing Junior said about him when like they were talking about like him and Bobby were talking about how tough he is for a man his size, but then Junior's like, what good is it if he dies? I can't even wear his shoes.
Walt only can really wield like the bolstered confidence he has from what he does. Like, the ego boost of being a successful drug lord is kind of all he can wield. Whereas everyone knows what Tony is. Everyone knows he's a mob boss. Everyone knows that, you don't fuck with him, you don't cross him, stuff will happen to you. So he's able to wield like threats. Whereas Walt doesn't really have that ability. All he has is like, cockiness, really.
But when he can, he does.
Because Tony's life isn't secretive, like outsiders pay him that kind of respect, whereas because of the intimidation factor, whereas Walt isn't really able to do that. Like, he's a successful drug lord, but that doesn't make anyone respect him more. Conversation about ego, because like Walter White obviously suffered from like the desperate need to have his ego stroked, and whereas I feel like Tony struggles a lot more with like self-hatred in a way.
Tony, like, he is the man. Like, it's already solidified that like he knows that it doesn't matter. Like, he is the boss, Whereas Walter White has to like, he's trying to fight for that position.
Yeah, Walt's ambitions are like, oh, I need to become the man, whereas Tony is like, I am the man, but like, am I really?
That was the big thing in Breaking Bad, was like how ego essentially was the downfall of every single character. Like, if they just decided to, like, if they just sold the meth until they made that amount of money and then stopped, it all would have been like all good. Even like those neo-Nazis in the end, like if they just killed Walt, it wouldn't. But the fact that Walt egged him on, saying he's your partner, right? And then he got them to pull Jesse out. Like, if like that, him like making that guy show his ego was the downfall of him, really. Like,
yeah, for sure. Gus as well.
There's no like clear villain. Like even the villains, like sometimes they're allies, like in The Sopranos, like depending on what they need.
There's no basis of morality when it comes to picking and choosing the villain. It's more like who are we meant to be rooting for here? There's no like, oh, this person is inherently worse. I mean, I guess the only thing is like, there's this tool that the show uses. It's like violence against women to like indicate like who's the bad guy. We have Ralphie. His most like reprehensible moment is killing
beating what was it? I don't remember her name. I forgot her name, but
I think Ralph's a little weird about women.
I don't know, Tom. I mean, he beat one to death just for, I forget. Why was it again?
Yeah, the young stripper, like beating and murdering her. So I feel like
a pregnant stripper with his child.
Yes.
Breaking Bad, because Gus is such a good character. I loved every moment with him.
Yeah, and he and Walt, because they're both very calculated and they're both manipulators, like, you get to see this kind of chess game play out between the two of them. Whereas, the Sopranos, like when it would be Jersey crew versus New York crew, it was very sloppy, and it was like, it was intentionally sloppy. It doesn't mean it was like less entertaining, but it was definitely less suspenseful, I'd say. With Walt and Gus, you're just like waiting for like every single move. One single look means something.
Which show do you think had better like writing and dialogue and all that?
Well, they have different approaches to it. With Breaking Bad, you can definitely feel like dialogue-wise, I definitely like The Sopranos more because I laugh a lot more in The Sopranos. I really value a show that can get across really dark, beautiful themes while also making me laugh. And there are a lot of profound lines, I think, especially by Melfi. And just any psychologist character in the show delivers a lot of really poignant observations on the situation. With the actual like arc writing, Breaking Bad, there's a lot more of like, when you look at it as a whole, you can kind of see like the architecture of it a lot more. You can see like a firmer kind of structure. Which I feel like, there's seeds planted, there's story arcs started and finished and this and that, which I feel like would ultimately cause me to say that Breaking Bad is overall, I guess, a more satisfying show in that sense. Whereas The Sopranos meanders, it feels a lot more true to life in that sense, where, a lot of things are left open-ended. Story arcs are kind of I mean, kind of, sort of finished, and some aren't. I mean, also they had to deal with a death. They had to deal with the death of Livia Soprano's actress. There was going to be a whole storyline about Livia testifying against her son. I don't think The Sopranos was as meticulously planned out as Breaking Bad, whereas like you can tell that from episode 1, Vince Gilligan knew what he was going to do with that show.
Breaking Bad was like watching a Western. It made you root for, like, I felt like you weren't always supposed to root for Tony. Like, you were supposed to hate Tony as the show goes on. But,
Yeah.
like, it gave, like, Walter a kind of, like, victorious ending in a way. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Whereas I feel, Walter pretty much got what he wanted, which was notoriety.
yeah.
And I think Tony is kind of, regardless of what you think the ending is. I mean, I think it's pretty clear with The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Tony is not victorious in any way. He is quite the L taker by the end of the show.
Walter basically, like, his family gets $9 million. He kills all his enemies. He saves Jesse. He dies in the only place he ever felt alive. It was like victorious. Like, literally everything that he wanted happened.
He won in some ways, he lost in others, but what truly mattered to him was his own ego.
Just out of, because, like, Walter wins, you feel more satisfied with the ending of Breaking Bad. They didn't want to give Tony a victorious ending, like,
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that the point of The Sopranos isn't to satisfy the audience. It was most directly exemplified with how, or best exemplified with how Melfi choosing to not divulge what happened to her, Tony. I think that was the most direct test that The Sopranos ever gave its audience, because that was a very frustrating moment as a viewer.
When you were talking about not satisfying the audience, that's literally what I was about to say. Like, you wanted so bad. Like, if this were any other show, it would have been like, this happened to me, and then it would have been a satisfying cut of Tony tracking the guy down, and you would have been happy. But no, like, you don't get that.
And I mean, I think the reasons for that are the reasons that she didn't do it are very valid. Not becoming indebted to Tony, not really involving him in her personal life.
Yeah, he would have held that over her forever.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, for sure. He would have used that in like his advancements to her. Like, it would have been not cute.
I mean, it was good, but I felt like, I don't know, like, that was one of the most, like,
that it really wasn't a plot line. It was just this one thing that happened to her. And I feel like with female characters, I feel like I'm just personally not a fan of graphic depictions of sexual assault. I think they're more or less unnecessary. And I feel like, given the fact that the trauma of what happened to her isn't really explored in further episodes, I feel like it was just like, I think it was just kind of unnecessary. I think, other things could have happened to her. She could have been mugged. The show didn't want to go into like the deep psychological trauma of being sexually assaulted, of being raped. I feel like, I feel like it was just unneeded if they weren't going to do the work to justify putting that in there, because it's a very disturbing scene. Like, I can't watch it. Like, it's so realistically acted that it's like, very, like, it's honestly a very stressful, unpleasant thing for me to watch, especially like as a female viewer, and like, that's a legitimate fear for every woman. So it's just not, I did not like it overall.
Sometimes you watch like a rape scene in a show and it feels like this, it's an assault, but like it still feels like it's eroticized. Like, they're trying to make this, like, that was just, no, that was like, it was horrible, man. And I don't like rape being used to advance the plot. If you want to explore that and then have it like be a thing that she has to deal with and overcome, and like it's a part of her character, I don't know. It's kind of like when they add racism in something just for the sake of like, oh, this is an edgy environment, so there's gonna be white boys beating up black people, like, but then it doesn't really amount to anything. Like, I don't like when it's like violence against women is just used to either advance the plot or to make the man, to add more character to the man. Like, when they use that.
Like, look how good this man is. He's defending her or saving her from being assaulted.
Something bad happens to a woman to add character to the dude.
A scene where the main character's, the male character's love interest is found murdered in a fridge, and it's like her death is used as like motivation for him. It's like a female character has something terrible happen to her for the sake of like propelling a male character's arc. I don't think that's the instance with
that's not what happened.
It's more about demonstrating Melfi's restraint and kind of showcasing where she's at, but it's still, you know, the show didn't do the work in terms of really exploring like what that does to a person.
Like they opened this whole box, but like didn't really explore it. Like it's not like I don't want this is kind of a dark
yeah. I don't know if you need to put this in the video, but that's just what I think. If I had to take something out of the show, it would be that for sure.
And then like the rapist getting no justice because just because a chain of what was it? A chain of custody command was disrupted with the evidence.
Realistic, like you're saying, you know who the guy is, and
because the wrong person touched the evidence at the wrong time, the evidence cannot be used against him.
It felt like, oh, look how fucked up our justice system is. Oh,
you know, I was on Reddit and I read a guy who said he's fast forwards every Melfi scene. Like that
guy is not.
He skips every therapy scene. Like you skip the plot.
How do you learn anything about Tony then? Like, don't make fun of me. The Dasani is all they had at the Starbucks.
I'm not a water tastes watery. Like Fiji water. No, get this out.
You can taste Dasani. It tastes like it's trying too hard to be like minerally.
It's water, man.
I drink from the sink.
You don't even get the purifier. You just straight turn on that sink.
Tap water undergoes more thorough regulation than bottled water.
Which series has the better acting? If you were just actor for actor, Tony Soprano and Walter White.
Both of them are phenomenal in a way that I don't even know how to describe. Like impeccable, brilliant. I think at the end of the day, there's more range in the Sopranos' like core cast, like, you know, James, Edie, Michael Imperioli, who plays Christopher. But I feel like, you know, there's more range in terms of like they make you laugh and you know, make you cry at the same time. But I mean, I think it's really hard. I really feel like the core 5 actors in Breaking Bad are just able to just carry that show. You know, Bryan Cranston and James Gandolfini, I think I would go with like whose performance I find more captivating. I'd go with James. I mean, Bryan Cranston is again amazing. Like, it cannot be understated how good he is in that show. But I think it was with James, you know, again, I think Tony is overall a more like kind of layered character. There's more contradictory things going on in his head. I think he's got it's almost as if like he's self-aware of everything he does in a way, and I feel like James is able to capture that. He's able to capture all those conflicting emotions, and we see a wider range of emotionality with him as well. I feel like we see complete rage, we see sadness, we see like, you know, depression, we see joy. Like we see all that in Walt, but I feel like we don't see it as frequently, whereas I feel like Tony crashes and burns a lot more frequently. Like he has more highs and more lows overall than Walt. So I feel like, and the fact that James is able to kind of keep up with that, I feel like is just really, it shows just how masterful he is.
You know a lot more about Tony Soprano. He goes to a psychiatrist, so it's kind of an excuse to delve into his childhood, break down in therapy like how every character makes him feel.
Each detail about the character is like a step, or just like or a direction, like a maze, and James just had more. Like he had more ways to go and places and directions and just angles. Whereas I think again, Walt is a lot more of a straightforward character. Bryan Cranston didn't have to with the exception of there are some key exceptions to this. Like I'd say Ozymandias when he is kind of trying to rally his family, but also dealing with the guilt of just having lost Hank.
Yeah.
And the panic of it all. I think, there are a lot of, I'm not going to say that there's no scenes of Walt having kind of like multi-layered emotions, but I mean like the way James is kind of able to incorporate like all of Tony's many folds, like it's just really impressive, like unprecedented, and I think still unsurpassed.
It's crazy how like Tony can go from like, and it's believable how he can have like a boy, like a childish like innocence about him. There's more facets to him. Walter kind of always acts like Walter.
Steve James, there's a lot more like personas involved. Walt is more confident when he is in his element, but outside of it, it's not like he is like shrewd. Like you see how Walt's work like is like the success of his work is like reflected in his personality. So you never really see Walter becoming a different person depending on his setting. Whereas Tony like totally switches it up, honestly. If you were to just sit down and write a 1-page paper summarizing both shows, you'd end up with a much better paper writing about Breaking Bad. You have a definitive arc. It'd just be a lot smoother, whereas with The Sopranos, it's like, I mean, you'll have your setting, your establishing setting, and then you just kind of go from there. It's not like there's seeds planted. Something from season 2 isn't gonna like significantly alter something from season 4. It's hard to compare plot lines. I feel like The Sopranos is just like a different viewing experience. I mean, there's obviously storylines like, say like Adriana and the FBI, or the tension between Tony and Ralphie, or Carmela and Furia. Like there's definitely things going on, but it's just not quite as structured overall. So I feel like, it's not, I feel like they're just designed differently in that way. In The Sopranos, a lot of just like random events happen, random as things happen to these characters, like terrible things just randomly happen in The Sopranos. Like it's really not, I would say The Sopranos is probably one of the most impossible to predict shows.
The way the episodes begin and end, like something that in a normal show would happen in like, that would be the finale, it'll just happen like in the middle of an episode. It this is the tense moment and this is gonna be where it ends. Nope. It just is brushed over.
And that's not to say The Sopranos doesn't have any like great, storylines. Like, my favorite stretch of the show is when Tony is shot.
Which time?
The dream sequence episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Those are my favorite episodes. And
That's
you
interesting.
You learn about how the other people. You learn about how. I mean, first of all, those dream sequences are just so insightful, so interesting. I love trying to break them down.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get to see how the crew kind of really feels about Tony, because he's obviously not really in power. He's incapacitated, and there's not going to be any consequences of them kind of expressing. And you see them not really actually respecting Carmela, and they're like, fuck her, like this, that. Like, I feel like this is really interesting. I was going to say something else. I forgot. Go ahead.
I've seen a lot of Sopranos fans saying that they skip the dream episodes. Like they see Tony get shot, and then they're like, I don't care for this whole alternate universe where he's.
To me, that's a sign that you're not really appreciating the character writing, because that is the character writing. Tony Soprano is the most thoroughly explored character in television history. Those dream sequences are a massive contribution to that, like not just the therapy sessions. They're a very surreal viewing experience. So I really appreciate them. It's not like they're wonky, like the camera's all, ooh, it's a dream. Like it's not like that.
I feel like this is an unpopular opinion, because when I look, the season I enjoyed the most of Breaking Bad was season 2. That was the season that, even though I don't think it's the best season, not that it was lighthearted, something about that season just that's what I remember the most. I mean, of course I remember I Am the One Who Knocks and all the insanity, but I don't know, something about season 2 just really, like, I think I had the most enjoyment watching season 2 of Breaking Bad.
I've seen the show at this point. I've seen Breaking Bad like 5 times because like my brother and I will randomly just want to watch all of it again. So I've seen it like 5 or 6 times at this point. I think I'm basic. I think I'm like everyone else. I think I like
It's 5B.
not the first half of 5. I think the second
Yeah.
half of 5 and 4. I think those are my
Yeah.
favorites.
Oh no, I love them.
Everybody
Like
else.
if I was to like objectively rate them, I would say like season 4, 5B. I don't know. I just like the simpleness of season 2. Like they weren't like it was like they had to get out of stuff on their own. Like they didn't have the backing of like
Yeah,
the
that's a good
Gus. Like it was just like them in their little like when you think of Breaking Bad, you think of them in their RV. Like,
Yeah.
like it was just
Yeah.
them having to meet with the distributor and like having like they had to do stuff like on their own. Like
And now that I think about it, one of my favorite episodes was that episode where they were kind of stranded in the desert.
yeah.
I really love that episode. What I liked about this feeling in season 4 is like season 3 was all prosperous and whatever, but season 4, like they were trapped.
I don't know. When I think of Breaking Bad, I just think of them chilling in their RV with the tidy whities on.
Yeah, it was definitely iconic.
I don't know. It felt more free because I'm a big Supernatural fan, even if it got horrible, even if majority of that show was horrible. But like the first 5 seasons are good, but I like seasons 1 and 2 the best because it's just Sam and Dean in the car. Like there's not really this big whole like plot going. It's just like, oh, we're hunting this monster, then we're gonna bond as brothers. Like season 1 of Breaking Bad was okay. It was good. It. I mean, it's not like something I would want to go back and watch again, but it was like it was cool.
That's where we disagree. I don't understand what people say when they say that, like, oh, it picks up. Like, to me, it was great from episode 1. I think episode 1, I think season 1 is really good. I actually do rewatch that season quite a bit. Even if I don't rewatch like the whole show, I will rewatch season 1 episode. I just like to see like
Humble
again
beginnings.
because again, Breaking Bad is such a definitive, like has such a definitive, clear cut arc. And so it's like it's interesting to see just just to compare to each of these characters and the situation became
Just want to see Walter with hair.
yeah.
I'm editing this video and I'm realizing that I didn't mention Tony Soprano's horrible hairline at all in the recording of this, which is a shame because that line is the worst line I've ever seen. And that was the weakest part of the show. That might make Breaking Bad better than The Sopranos, just because Walter decided to cut his hair when it started falling out. Back to the video.
It's like fun to see him when he first like loses his hair. Maybe fun wasn't the right word.
Cancer is so much fun. One thing Breaking Bad does so much that I despise, but I put up with it because it was such a good show. This isn't me. This isn't a bad thing. This is just a personal thing that I hate. I hate any show that begins with like the middle or the end when it's the most insane thing and then it's like 3 days earlier. Like I I hate that so much. I hate like I will literally like if I'm starting a show and then I see like a woman getting thrown off a building and a dude gets shot in the head and then it says 3 hours earlier, I'm like, nope. Watch Supernatural seasons 1 through 5, but then nothing else.
I don't want to become more zombified.
That's all you need to do. Just 1 through 5 between Breaking Bad and Sopranos. You think has the most memorable moments? Like just moments.
Probably Breaking Bad, I mean, a testament to, I am the one who knocks, pizza on the roof, say my name. I think those are viral, iconic moments for a reason. And the imagery, I think Breaking Bad, I would say is a visually a more impressive show. Not that The Sopranos isn't, but I think the shots of the Arizona, or not Arizona, the New Mexico sky, the imagery,
the hat, man, the hat, the hat, dude.
Hats, the RV, the silhouettes of the RV like stark against the just the vastness of the boonies. Like it's beautiful.
Yeah, I gotta say, when I think of like The Sopranos. Like The Sopranos have like a I am the one who knocks moment. There's
It
great
has
writing in The Sopranos.
it has the who never had the makings of a varsity athlete.
Yeah, as far as like monologues, I think Breaking Bad has better monologues than The Sopranos. Walter White is just smarter, so he can articulate himself better. Talk and like The Sopranos, where like they're dumb, like they say things wrong. Especially Christopher, like he's just stupid. Like
I love your commitment to always saying Christopher.
I will always say Christopher.
I need to change my battery again. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I was like, oh yeah, my mic's not unplugged, so I can still talk to you. The Sopranos, not. I mean, I guess. Sorry, start over. What I wanted to say about this. What I wanted to say. What I wanted to say about Breaking Bad having better monologues, I think is also a testament to Breaking Bad in embracing kind of a more cinematic quality overall, that these characters have these kind of like moving words prepared and
Yeah.
these grandiose statements. I think the only thing I can really think of like that compares to say I am the one who knocks. I remember early in The Sopranos there was this line about there was this Orthodox Jewish person.
That's literally what I was
Yeah.
dude. I was like, that's yes.
The Romans, you're looking at them, yeah.
That was kind of the only cinematic moment. And I feel like Sopranos tries hard to be anti-cinema.
They're not, sleek. They're not
Yeah.
beautiful. Like,
I think another like line that was that who am I? Where am I going?
compare that to just who Tony is, like fundamentally compared to Walter. He's a lot more of an insecure man. Walt's most iconic lines are kind of these like grandiose statements of superiority, like say my name, I am the one who knocks. You know, commanding respect in a way, whereas something like that comes to your mind so naturally is self-doubt, uncertainty, lack of satisfaction.
What was that where she was like depression is anger turned inwards or something?
Yeah, one of the lines that I wanted to mention earlier was like, oh, Tony was talking about his genes, and she said, when you blame your genes, you're blaming yourself. And I think Melfi was just providing really insightful lines. Like, I think that guy who's skipping the Melfi scene, he's just like passing up an opportunity to learn.
Breaking Bad is a more cinematic experience
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like, yeah, because Sopranos was actively trying to be not cinematic. Like there was no grand, like every character is pathetic. Like no character really gets their moment. Like they're like, haha, like Walter White kind of always gets his like, I've outsmarted everyone. Like, anime pushing
That, like,
up
white
the
Yagami
glasses.
ass.
Yeah, like I've outsmarted everyone.
My plan.
The characters don't ever get that. That's why I feel like Sopranos feels like a real world that exists.
Yeah, there's no moments to like bask in like glory.
Yeah.
Like, even if someone does have a victory, everyone just moves on. Sopranos is a show where no one like stops and smells the roses. Honestly, everyone's like, I mean, there's that scene at the end of the first season where Tony's having a family with his dinner, and he's like, remember these moments, savor them, and then AJ brings it up in the very last episode and he doesn't remember it. Maybe it's not like the suspense of if Tony was ever going to leave the life. It's more about the question of if he ever could have, if there was ever an opportunity to leave the life, if there was any other possible way for him to go.
One of my favorite moments was when he was trying to justify his life to Melfi. We came here as immigrants. They didn't give us nothing. Like explaining all this, and then Melfi was just like, what do Italian immigrants have to do with you right now? Doing like this whole history, how we had to build our own, we had to do this, like they weren't giving us nothing, we had to form our own.
Who would Melfi correspond to? I'm thinking more like what character exists in Breaking Bad to really like hold up a mirror to Walt. Maybe Mike in a way.
Well,
Mike a lot, definitely.
I think of Breaking Bad, it's like just a constant moving, like it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Sopranos is just like this is life, like this is just the daily life of mobsters,
Slice of life anime mobs,
like, yeah, like everything. I'm imagining that You saved me when I was a child. Like,
Each episode.
リムル様いかがでしょう。
What the fuck? Carmela!
Breaking Bad is more cinematic. They both do what they're trying to do really well. Like they
Yeah,
both
and
achieve what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think I stand by what I said earlier about Breaking Bad ultimately being a more satisfying experience.
Yeah.
Just because of how everything's planted. But I feel like the unplannedness of Sopranos, I think it benefits it in a lot of ways. I think again the lack of resolution doesn't feel like a cop out, doesn't feel like the creator is avoiding these answers. It's more like he's presenting multiple. A key example of something unplanned ending up being beneficial. I think the death of Tony's mother, which I mean, of course, it's tragic that the actress died. I'm very, I think Livia's character did have more to provide the show.
Yeah.
But I think because the plan was, I don't know if you knew this, but the plan was to have Livia testify against her son because of the plane tickets. So she was going to testify against him and everything like that. But I think, having her, die suddenly in the show
It
had
added to the unplannedness.
Tony's feelings about his mother were kind of unresolved in a way. Whereas I feel like had she testified against him, it would have really solidified the idea that, she had no love for her son and she was not a good person. I think having that kind of solid or that reconciliation would have helped Tony maybe avoid the pitfalls of becoming more like his mother, falling into that despair, falling into that bitterness. I feel like, having things that are unresolved benefited Tony's character and the writing in general, because it made it so it was harder for him to grow as a person, because there's just no resolution there. There's nothing tied up with a loose bow. Everyone is still processing as they go.
Livia was such a good character, so evil. I loved her.
Yeah, it's like she was so like, honestly, I don't think a single character has ever made me more miserable. Like her scenes are a chore to get through. So unpleasant. You see her and you're like, I see why you're like this, Tony.
I think the episode of Breaking Bad, I thought every episode was really good. But the only episode that I was annoyed, I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore, was that fly episode. I was so annoyed. I was like, I never want to watch, other than that one scene where he's like, that one moment, if I would have died at that time when I was holding my daughter. Other than that scene, skip. Like, I never need to watch.
Sure. I was thinking about it as I was watching. Because like with the ring light, there's a fly. It's like attracted to it. I was like, fuck that episode.
That one scene though is amazing. The way the episode began, where I was like, okay, this is gonna be the thing. Like they're gonna be searching for this fly for the whole time. Watched 10 minutes of it and then I left, came back. Like I was so annoyed that it took me so long to finish it because I was just so bored.
I'm trying to think of a Sopranos episode or storyline I didn't enjoy. And right now all I can think of is like Carmela and the priest.
Yeah, that was weird.
I just didn't like him. I understand what he was supposed to represent for Carmela, like that kind of temptation and whatever, but I just thought he was such a douchebag.
Not because I think it's bad. I think it's a really good episode. It's just Tony was so petty that I can't watch it. Was that Chasing It episode where the one guy wants his money back, and he's, where Tony, the Jewish guy, gives Tony 100,000.
Oh, Hesh.
Yeah, that episode, I never watched that again. It's a great episode, but it's just Tony is so petty.
Other than the Malfi assault episode, which I have never voluntarily watched, I think Tony's most unlikable moment is when he's taunting Janice into having a mental breakdown. It's just such a piece of shit in that scene. Indefensibly awful, like pure misery have to drag someone down because you can't stand the sight of someone better.
Healthily handling their anger because he can't.
He wants to be this like wants to be all determinist and think that everything was set in stone. His genes set him up for this. He has no choice but to be who he is. But then he sees someone with the exact same both nature and nurture, same genetics, same up raising, everything like that, and she is taking the steps to better herself, and he can't stand that.
This is another thing that happens on the show that makes me, I mean, it's not bad, it just makes me laugh. How like these like overweight Italian gangsters appear out of nowhere. Where was he? I would have heard Vito like waddling and like breathing. I'm like, where was Tony hiding? Like, where you would have heard Tony breathing. Ending wise, I think Breaking Bad stuck with me more. Objectively, I think Sopranos is a better show, like overall. Like
it's my favorite show. Like Sopranos is just overall my favorite show. I love Breaking Bad like so much. Like it's so good. You can't overstate how good it is. Just the Sopranos, I like things that give me food for thought. I like things that leave me pondering, that leave me to uncover more. And I think the Sopranos, I think with Breaking Bad, rewatching it is kind of seeing like all the seeds planted and everything like that. Whereas I feel like the Sopranos, I think it just stimulates more, engages the audience more intellectually. I like the level of engagement it requires from the audience. Breaking Bad is just a more conclusive, satisfying ending.
Realizes that I was about to say Lucifer instead of Junior.
A Freudian slip right there. That's what you think of him.
So I understand Freud.
Junior has dementia. When he's like, so I like, he's like, so I was thinking, all that varsity stuff that you don't really realize that you're saying this. Then he's like, but why does it only have to be bad things? Like, why can't you like repeat good things about me? Like him, like really, like moments where he like really delves into himself. Like that was kind of a vulnerable moment, and that took work for him to get there. Like, there's moments of like that all throughout The Sopranos, whereas like I don't think Breaking Bad has like really leaves you like thinking about things.
Other than I think Walt letting Jane die, I can't think of more scenes that have kind of fundamentally changed my opinion of a character, just how I thought of them.
With The Sopranos, it begins and Tony is already peak evil. Like he's already like pure evil. Whereas like with Breaking Bad, it's like seeing him become this way, like rather than like
For sure.
Starting at that point. Tony is just deplorable, like right away.
Breaking Bad is kind of the story of a very straightforward story of a good man becoming a bad man. Sopranos is more or less a bad man missing his chance of becoming a good man. It's not really, the suspense is, by the end of it, the suspense wasn't will Tony become a good person? It's more like, was there ever a chance for him to become a good person? Was there any opportunity? Is there any semblance of choice?
In the end, you realize like, no, this man is a sociopath. Like
for sure, but it's like yeah, for sure. And I mean, how much of that was predestined? It's the classic nature v nurture, or determinism. Was Tony destined by his genetics, by his background, to become this way, to live this life, or was there a chance? Was there a chance for him to escape? If he had taken Melfi's therapy more seriously?
I feel like this video is so Sopranos leaning, but there's just more to talk about. Like there's not like
Bad fans watching. It seems we're kind of biased.
It's Breaking Bad is great. It's great, but there's just more to talk about when it comes to
literally. That's what I'm saying. That's why I prefer the show. I mean, we ended up talking more about the more to talk about.
Don Corleone. He is a mobster. He's a killer. He's no better. It gives him kind of like, he's like the kind-hearted, sweet one. He's like the justified one. There's no one like that in The Sopranos.
That the Don is just presented, the way he's filmed, like the way he's dressed, like everything about him showcases like he is someone to be respected and revered. No one in the Sopranos is treated with that kind of respect, like visually, by the camera, by the framing, by anything. Everyone is presented so mortally, you know. Carmela pointing out like the fakeness, devotion to him, like how they'll always laugh at any jokes he says, even if they're not that funny. Definitely a more realistic portrayal. It does not make being the boss beat look enviable. That's what I'll say.
The weakest moment of Breaking Bad to me, and they weren't bad villains, the neo-Nazis. Because when you watch Breaking Bad, every like Gus or like all the other villains, they kind of felt real and balanced. But then the neo-Nazis felt like, I don't know, they felt like cartoonishly, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There wasn't, they just weren't layered.
I think at that point the showrunner, I mean Vince Gilligan, had wanted to make the show more about Walt's own kind of character flaws. The Nazis were kind of this just generic backdrop to kind of force.
Not to say they were bad. I enjoyed them. Like they were.
Yeah, I mean they weren't bad either. I think again the emphasis in those last couple seasons is like the just kind of where Walt had gotten himself.
It's like everything felt so real and grounded, but then it was like, okay, these neo-Nazis just feel like some generic, like cartoonish villain to me.
Even like the zaniest villain, Tuco, like he was just.
Tuco was much better. I love Tuco. Every scene of Tuco was amazing.
Tuco, that was so crazy, like so insane. And I know people who are like that. Cough, cough. He was the exact opposite of Gus.
But those neo-Nazis, I was like, okay, this is like some 80s generic villain. Like, yeah, that was the antagonist of season 5. It was Walt's decisions. Yeah, I think objectively and subjectively, Sopranos is a better experience. It's been like 30% Breaking Bad, 70% Sopranos.
I'm so sorry, guys.
But there's just so much more to talk about, man. There's so many more layers. You talk about Breaking Bad, it's like, okay, he sells meth, and then he gets more evil, and then
you talk about. I feel like with Breaking Bad, it's like you can only just rave about how good it is.
Yeah,
it's like you can just sing its praises, but in terms of what's really there and there's just not that much to really investigate or uncover. I think it's a very straightforward viewing experience. When I rewatch Breaking Bad, I notice I think Vince Gilligan is a lot more like of a visual storyteller. I think he implements color motifs a lot more. He frames things, not that David Chase doesn't, but for instance, in season 1, like the color yellow is an indicator of danger. It's not like I watch Breaking Bad and I gain some like new insight into the characters or like the story or the writing or anything like that. Like I pretty much got it the first time. I'm somebody who often has difficulty with making like tough decisions and making like really strong decisions. Like I always want like the best of both worlds, and I really sympathize or empathize with the scene of him becoming a made man and him kind of looking out the window of the bird, kind of really leaving that like what if, him not fully being committed to his choice. Like I just really do relate to that. Just Jesse is just he's so likable, he's so kind-hearted. I think that's what it is. I think Christopher is he's tormented in a lot of ways, and maybe that makes him sympathetic, but he is ultimately just not a good person. Jesse is a good person.
I wouldn't consider Jesse a good person.
I think the show makes it clear that Jesse does have a good heart. I think the way he treats Jesse doesn't treat people poorly.
He went to an addiction meeting trying to sell drugs to recovering addicts. That's kind of
that's not great. Okay, you're right. Fundamentally to his core, I think Jesse is portrayed as being, if not a good person, a salvageable person. Tony doesn't express love well. Christopher doesn't express love well. But Jesse can. Jesse can show affection. Jesse can be a loving presence in someone's life. And I think that's a testament to how he is. I think there's a good soul in there. I think, you know, he gets mixed up. I mean, is there an ethical way to sell meth? I don't think so.
Overall, I think we both in agreement that Sopranos is the superior show.
Not any disrespect to Breaking Bad. It's just I think about The Sopranos a lot more. And I've only seen The Sopranos twice all the way through, and I've seen Breaking Bad about 5 or 6 times, and I think about The Sopranos far more in terms of just in sheer reverence for how much there is to uncover, how much there is to interpret.
Thank you for being here, Phaedra. Subscribe to her. Follow Miss Phantasm, Issa Faye. All the socials. Subscribe to her. Newfound Glory, the greatest band.
No, I'm still supposed to hate you. I know I'm still supposed to hate you.